government deems. This just happens to be firearms. You're a firearms person. We're talking to you, and that's the bailiwick right now. But it could be any number of things where government goes, I don't know, man. Your hip surgery a while back. I don't know if you should be driving that car. Like, well, wait, why? Well, you might lose control of the gas pedal. We've had a series of people doing that lately who have all had hip surgeries, and yeah, people with hip surgeries probably shouldn't drive. It's like, whoa, no, I've recovered. Yeah, we forgot to write that into the law.
Right. Yeah, and now, guess what? Now you, right? Burden is on you, individual, that we're taking that right away to go back and send us all of the information that we need to be able, so that you can prove to us
that you're competent. Our system is broken, competent, safe, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to go back now and prove to us that this is, that you're acceptable, even though our system is the one that is screwed up. So.
And if I may, because we're getting a little long here, and we're getting a little into the weeds, I want to bring this back around to domestic violence. So, yeah, you're a survivor. You lead other survivors. You're highly well regarded as somebody who's a hard charging.
Hey, thanks.
Take no. You are. I mean, you got 8,700 followers on Instagram or something. I think I have 200.
So I don't have that many, but whatever. I do have a pretty big reach. I have a pretty active reach. So,
point being, Kerry, the point being, Kerry, that you are doing something. People are following you. You have an impact. You've got a little bit of a celebrity status of sorts, which I think is admirable and to be respected. But you're sending a message that I think is a little bit out of the mold, which is, and I'll let you talk a little bit more about this, but there seems to be an emerging trend, and you keep using the word survivor, and I spoke with our Safe Embrace folks here locally, Jessica and John, about this in a different podcast. The word survivor is now starting to supplant and replace the word victim, because it encourages that you first of all, you're not being victimized. You're not handing over your control to somebody else. It's not externally located. But it speaks to resilience and growth and evolution. And when we're talking about DV and sexual assault, which sometimes are hybridized, when we're talking about domestic violence and your ability to overcome it, I think it's really important that you're surrounded by the narrative that says you as an individual have the power to overcome things. And the reason that we're diving into the weeds on all this, gun restriction stuff and background checks and mental health stuff, is because the more the net tightens on the resources that you're allowed to get, because there's either a perceived or a real threat to your individual liberties, the less likely you are to recover. Am I close?
Yes, there is a piece of that, and but also which goes into the whole the red flag law thing. So yes, absolutely, you're less likely to recover. And I want to make a comment on the word victim versus survivor. I think that survivor can, which by the way I am. I mean, I survived my incident. I have a wonderful husband and a daughter who is who was there when it happened. It was her father that beat me up, and we are thriving and we're doing great. And so yes, I am a survivor, and I think that's wonderful. I do, however, think that the word can be a little contrived, and I think that completely ignoring the word victim does not. It's okay to admit that you were a victim of something. Right. That doesn't make you a victim personality.
Yeah, there's a difference between playing the victim and being a victim.
And being a victim, and that's I'll have to tell you sometimes, Jake, about that with my husband, because I'm always like, I'm not a victim. He's like, sometimes you're a victim of something, and because I have so I struggled with that because I'm anti-victim mentality almost to a fault. Where I lack empathy for people that have any, if I could just sniff it in the wind, I'm like, I'm not dealing with these people. So that's my cross to carry, and something I work on with trying to be a little bit more empathetic to it. But so I struggle with that. But I do think that by not just acknowledging it, that you're also not giving it the impact or the power that it
absolutely
could have.
Absolutely. I think that it's a matter of language, and in America, English in particular, we lack the ability to emphasize temporary versus permanent in the way that we talk about things. So when you say victim, it's like, I am a victim. Well, it goes down to the root of the verb to be, and we don't have a permanent and a temporary to be in English like they have in other languages. So when you say I am, it all sounds permanent, and it speaks to characterological issues rather than just this event that happened and now it's gone. So I would encourage people to
perpetuated, of course, by our media, and being able to use that. So I agree with that. One of the things I'd like to touch on with this, if you're okay, before we because I see people, Jake and I could just go like this is people can hardly get bored and edgewise in our conversations because we can talk for hours about these things. But one of the things I do want to bring some awareness to that concerns me deeply is this red flag law issue with domestic violence survivors. Domestic violence survivors are very commonly used by gun control advocates as a way to justify gun control laws. One of the statistics they throw out is in mental health. I know y'all love for the side that understands what statistics are really for what they are, is a domestic violence victim is 5 times more likely to be killed if there's a firearm in the home by the abuser. Well, 5 times more likely than what? Than her not being able to defend herself because nobody is, paid to have that study. I mean, there's all kinds, right? Nobody's ever talked about the other side of that. So that being said, that's one of the things I noticed, like coming into this gun culture that I didn't even know existed less than a year ago, is for all of the reasons that people have that are very valid and justified reasons for not, for some of these the concerns about gun control laws, nobody had talked about domestic violence. And even the individuals that are domestic violence survivors that have armed themselves, nobody had made it a platform. And I didn't intend to. Like I said, I was blessed with the ability to have this voice. When my post was shared, obviously I knew that I was being given, this was my responsibility to take on, which I'm okay with. So let me be clear. I'm a constitutionalist, and I do very much believe in the power of, and I'm not a party person whatsoever. So I very clearly understand that there is a fundamental due process violation that happens. So when I talk about my concerns about these laws on domestic violence victims, I am not discounting the validity also of due process and when things are arbitrarily taken. That being said, when we're talking about red flag laws and we're talking about domestic violence victims, there are multiple layers of concerns that I have as an advocate for these women and as a voice for these women being disarmed. So you've got several situations, one of which is I was looking for a statistic on this, and I ended up in this rabbit hole of predetermined mental health diagnosis, seeking domestic violence versus what is diagnosis after, and anyway, so I couldn't nail down a solid statistic, but I'm guessing it's pretty high because most Americans in general have some sort of mental health diagnosis, I think, on their records now. On some level. But most domestic violence victims are going to have some sort of mental health diagnosis on their record, albeit depression, anxiety, PTSD, before they in fact realize that they need to self-diagnose themselves, that they're in fact with an a-hole.
I would concur, by the way.
They've gone through all of this mental, this mental health care. So they have all of these things on their record that, they tried to go make this purchase and because they decided that they're going to need to train, right? And make a purchase and do what they need to because maybe for whatever reason in their mind they can't get out of their situation. Some women it is harder to get out of those situations than others for sure, because they continue to be found or whatever. So they could be denied that firearm. It could be exposed in some way, whether inadvertently or overtly, and then put them more at risk by their abuser. In a red flag law call, which, by the way, is completely arbitrary, particularly in Washington State, my neighbor could call because they hear yelling in the house. Well, we could be playing, a video game or watching a movie or something, and if there's a domestic disturbance call made, all firearms, regardless of who the owner is, comes out of the home for what they've said is a predetermined amount of time. Well, you and I both know that they're not going to hold to that predetermined amount of time. They can't even do it for an arraignment half the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or a traffic ticket, let alone, because they keep delaying stuff. So all firearms come out disarming the domestic violence victim. I always feel like I'm drunk. I always feel like I'm drunk when I say this, but the
Adjudication.
Thank you. Like I said, that one is judicial. It makes me feel like I'm drunk when I'm trying to say them. So that process.
The adjudication process.
Adjudication process. Well, I know what it is. I just can't say it. Puts, so at best, let's just say best case scenario, that they're able to go through that process for the arrested individual. Because, it could be women beat up men, right? 1 in 7 men are domestic violence victims as well. So if we want to talk holistically and equality, which is a big thing for me, we'll say in general. So for that individual to go through that process, let's say the best case scenario that they get it done in that amount of time, that 96 hours or 2 weeks or whatever it is, depending on your state, because these are in place in other states. The most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim to be re-victimized is within that 72 to 96 hour period of that abuser being arraigned and released.
Mm-hmm.
And he's angry. He's angry they are angry at their, the victim. Because you're right, the victim's the one that put them there, of course.
Right.
Even if somebody else called, it's still the victim's fault, right? So these victims are being put in a position to not be able to defend themselves at one of their most vulnerable times in their lives. So that in itself is problematic. You add to the layers of that she goes into she goes and gets mental health care for her abuse, that it could be the cause of her not getting her firearms back, and in a way to defend herself. That happened to one of my volunteers, or would have happened to one of my volunteers under a red flag law. Fortunately, it wasn't in place, although your firearms could have been removed for years. Like, people don't realize this red flag law thing, it just has a name now, but it's been in place forever. A few years back, she was trying to get away from her abuser, and she hung up on him one night because she was sick of listening to him, and turned off her phone, and he got pissed off at her and called the police and said that she was suicidal and that she had a gun, when in fact she wasn't suicidal. Police show up at her door at 2 a.m. in the morning, scare the hell out of her, and they're doing this welfare check, and they take her gun. So now we have a situation where this law can also be used against victims to disarm them. And that's a very dangerous thing, because there is no criteria, that's written in. It's just so arbitrary. In addition, what it can do is it can be used against the victim while she's still in her situation, right? So now this person can say, well, if you try to leave me, I'm going to tell the police that you're mentally unstable and, have your guns taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Or tell them that you need a psych eval and have that on your record. So now it can also be used against her in a way to keep her in that situation. So these are all things that people, I know that when you and I talked initially, that you in the mental health care field, a couple of them you didn't consider.
I hadn't. No, I had not considered.
Yeah. Because people don't think about that with the DV, situation. But particularly some of these legislators are certainly not thinking about it. So this isn't, for me, when people, obviously I was thrown into a very hotbed political conversation with this, but this isn't even political, right? This is a policy issue. This is a lack of knowledge and research and using political agenda to write policy that negatively impacts victims, and they don't care. Like, it's just being railroaded. I have yet to hear anybody else come out as vocally as I have about the negative impact of laws on domestic violence survivors in means to defend themselves. They love to make us victims, and they love to keep us continue to be victimized. Like, every policy that's in place puts us in a position to perpetuate victimhood, as opposed to teaching them how to not be victims.
If I'm a proponent of red flag laws and I say, well, the whole point is to keep people safe from death.
You suck.
Okay. No. Yeah. But if I say, well, the whole point is to keep people safe from death because guns are instruments of death, and harm is less than death, and if I've kept somebody alive, then the red flag law worked because